Okay, it's time to get started today. Thank you everyone for joining our live lecture. My name is Isaac and I'll be the lead instructor. And today's topic will be Front-End Foundations Part 2. So what that means is this lecture will cover the second half of the Front-End Foundations curriculum. So if you're in that section, this is the lecture for you. A couple things to mention before we get started today. First one being is that we're going to stop periodically throughout this lecture to open the floor for questions. So we just ask if you do have questions come up along the way, you wait until those designated times to ask them. Another thing to mention is that we're recording this lecture. So once we're done here, we're going to post it on our YouTube channel. We're going to make that link available to you in your student dashboard. So diving right in, let's go ahead and discuss what topics we'll be learning about today. Okay, and there's two core topics we're going to be focusing. Okay, and that is jQuery and Bootstrap. So let's go ahead and let's start with jQuery. Okay, so jQuery is a JavaScript library designed to simplify the client-side scripting of HTML. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by talking about the jQuery library symbol. As you can see, it's a $sign here. It's the syntax that's used for selecting HTML elements and performing actions on those elements. Okay. So how we can select elements is by using what's called selectors. And we've got a couple different kinds. We've got ID selector, and we can target elements using their ID attribute. And we got class selectors. That's used to target group of elements using class attribute. So let's go ahead and create an ID and a class selector to change the color of HTML elements to blue on page load using jQuery. Yes, I said using jQuery and not CSS. So to do this, let's get started by opening up our command line, changing directories onto our desktop, make a new directory, and I'll call it Front-End Foundations, and then we'll open that up in our text editor here. Okay, so now we got that open up. Let's go ahead and start by putting a index.html doc right in the root. And then within that doc, we'll go ahead and put an HTML skeleton. So we'll start with the root. We'll put in a head element and then a title within that. And I'll say Front-End Foundations. And then right below the head, we'll do a body. Within the body, we'll do an h1. We'll say hello world. Okay, so from here, we can save all. And we can copy the path of our index, and we can paste it right into our browser bar. We can see that it is rendering the markup shown here. Okay, so now we can go ahead and we can bring in our script. Okay, so I'll go ahead and create an app.js in my root. This is where I'll write my custom jQuery code. Okay, and we need to link that up into our doc here. So right at the bottom of the body, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little note in for app scripts. In this section, I'll go ahead and start by putting in a script with a source pointing to app.js. Okay, so now we can save all. We can inspect and go to network and refresh. We can see we get our HTML doc loaded in as well as our script. So now we can bring in jQuery. And how we bring in jQuery is we can use a CDN. Okay, so if you go to cdnjs.com and you search for jQuery, we can copy the path. As you can see, the path is just a live web address, right, with a hosted jQuery file. Okay, so from here, we can go ahead and right above our app.js script, let's go ahead and throw another script with a source, pointing to jQuery. And that way it'll load in jQuery, and then once it's loaded in, we can write custom code within this file here. So let's save all. And let's go back to our browser here and refresh. We can see that it's loading in jQuery as well as our other script. Okay. So now let's go ahead and let's set up some jQuery selectors to change the specific styles of given elements. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead, just start with a single element here. And when the browser loads, let's use jQuery to change the style of this element. So I'm going to give an ID so we can target it. And I'll call this my greeting element. And then within my app.js file here, I can go ahead and I can use the jQuery symbol to select. Okay, so if we go ahead and we console log symbol here, Refresh. You can see that. Oops. I got my log statement here. There we go. And we can see that, it's returning that functionality, right? So we can use that to first target the document, and then we'll use the ready method. So when the document is loaded in, we can then run the callback function, at which point it's going to target the element by its ID. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll say let greeting equals, and then we're going to say bling parentheses hashtag greeting. Okay, so now I've encapsulated this element within the variable greeting. So what I can do as soon as the page loads is I can use the method CSS, and I can pass in a style. The style I'll pass in is color of red. Okay, so see this in action. We save all, back to our browser and refresh. We can see that without using any CSS style sheets, we're able to select and update the style of that element, right? And this is where jQuery really excels, is we can, create really great animations and page updates by, having a library that's so well connected to the DOM. So now let's go ahead and take this one step further, and let's create a group of elements we can target. So I'm going to go ahead and set the class name, or class equal to color red. Okay, this will just be element 1, and we'll have element 2, and we'll have element number 3. And they'll all have the same class attribute. That way we can group them all together. Okay, so as you saw before, when we use an ID, it's just for targeting one element. Sometimes you want to target a group, so that's when you use a class. So now, within our app.js file, what it can do is I'll create a variable called lgroup for my element group, and it'll be equal to bling parentheses dot, and then the name, which is color red. So from here, we can go ahead and update the group by saying lgroup.css, and then we can change the color to red. So, save all. Refresh our browser. We can see that, regardless of element type, is grouping them all together by class and updating their style. Okay, and this is just one of many methods you can use with jQuery, right? jQuery has a ton of different methods accessible through our selector here. So definitely explore our docs as your curiosity sees fit. So now we know how to update elements in jQuery. Let's go ahead and continue. Let's talk about jQuery events. Okay, and so specifically the jQuery click event. So anytime we want to run a click event on a specific element, we just need to capture that element's value and then run the click method here, which executes a callback function for each time it's clicked. So that being said, the most appropriate element for this scenario would be a button. Just go ahead. Yeah, let's start the button here. And the idea behind our button is it will greet every time we click. Okay, so let's go ahead and say greet here. And then we can give an ID here called button. Within app.js, whenever it loads, we can go ahead and say my button equals bling parentheses, and then because it's an ID, we're going to use hashtag to target as a hashtag greeting, or my button. So now we can set up an event listener by saying my button.click. Whenever it's clicked, it accepts a callback function, which time we'll go ahead and console log a greeting. Okay, so now that we have that set up, let's go ahead and save all. Refresh our browser. Oops. There we go. When we click greet, we can see that it says hello world. Okay, and that's how you can work with the click event in jQuery. Next, let's talk about how you can work with input values. Okay, so just like the click event, we can assign a value to a variable and then use the val method to return the value of the input. So let's go ahead and let's follow our lab here, and let's create a little form which takes in an input value and displays it using jQuery. So what we're going to do is my button here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it different context here. I'll just say submit. And then I'm going to put an input up here to have a type of text. I'll give an ID called my input. Then we'll do a placeholder. And they just need to put in a greeting here. Okay, so now we can use each of these IDs and assign them to a variable. Okay, so I'm just going to start off with my button, and then after my button, I'll go ahead and do my input. Full spling, hashtag my input. And then, whenever the button's clicked, we could display the input by doing the following operation. We could say my button.click. Then we will console log the value of the input. So we'll say my input dot val invoke. So we save all. Back to our browser, we refresh, we enter a greeting, say hey there, submit. And the element's clicked, it runs our event listener, and then using the val method, we extract the value from the input and console log it here to our browser console. And that's how we can work with input-output in jQuery. Okay, so let's go ahead and open the floor, and let's see if anyone has any last questions on jQuery before we move on. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have questions, feel free to ask those now. Okay, I don't hear anyone. So let's go ahead and move forward. And next, talk about Bootstrap. Okay, so Bootstrap is a front-end library for designing websites and web applications. Okay, so a couple different parts to Bootstrap. Okay, so first, let's go ahead and let's reference the Bootstrap website, which we can reference at getbootstrap.com. We'll click on the Getting Started section. And because it's a design library, it's going to integrate HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all into one. So that being said, we've got to import HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy the CSS styling here. And come into my index and put it right below my title. Okay, so now it's loading in Bootstrap static styles. And then I can bring in jQuery, which Bootstrap relies on for a lot of its operations. You can bring in Popper.js, which is another third-party library for animations, and then the core Bootstrap library. So we copy all three of these, and we paste them in like so. Okay, and now we have brought in the Bootstrap library. Okay, so first part we're going to focus on is the grid. Okay, and the grid is a structure in which a web page is divided into major regions. And so you can think of it very much like an Excel spreadsheet where you got rows and columns. The row is the parent wrapper for the columns, and the column is the number of sections you'd like to use out of the possible 12 per row. So that being said, let's reference their documentation and look at the layout. And then from here, we'll look at the grid. So as you can see, you just use math, to calculate the percentages, right? You have 3 of these, so, it'll equate evenly. And then we can make our, grids responsive based on the width of the screen, right, which will indicate different device sizes, and therefore we can make nice responsive grids. So let's just go ahead and copy this one here, and we'll paste it right on in our browser here. And we go back to our browser and refresh, we can see that it has set up, a brick-like structure, right? And that is the grid. So next, let's go ahead and let's talk about components. Okay, so components are different parts of a web page. So for this, we'll go reference Bootstrap, and we'll go to components, and we'll start with alerts. So alerts are, pretty straightforward. They just alert the user of some sort of message, whether it's, an error or a success message, doesn't matter. They got, pretty much all your different scenarios covered. So let's save all, and let's go back to our browser here and refresh, and just like that, out of the box, they all work, with no styling needed on our end. Okay, and that's the real great part about Bootstrap, is a real plug-and-play framework where you just copy and paste their examples in and edit them as you need, and you're up and running and ready to go. And you didn't have to spend hours styling the border radius and all this other stuff. Okay, so we look at badges next. You've probably seen these on places with social media content, alerting you new messages, new inbox, that kind of thing. So we could go ahead and see badges in action. Throw those in our text editor here. And let's go ahead and save all. And let's refresh. And as you can see, we've got nice, simple badges. Okay. Next, we got breadcrumbs. And breadcrumbs, just like we see here, right? Indicators of history where we've been in the nav bar. Okay. Next, we have buttons. And buttons are pretty self-explanatory. We can click them to run specific events. They've got all sorts, solid buttons, outline buttons, full width buttons, small, medium, large. They've really got all your bases covered. So let's just go ahead and copy this first example here. And we paste it right on in our text editor. We save all. We refresh. And we can see that we get the different kinds of buttons. And they've got a nice little highlight effect and all that kind of stuff. Next, we got button groups. This is if you don't want space between your buttons, right? Something like a pagination or whatever else. So let's go ahead and copy that and plug it right in here. So we refresh. As you can see, we have a nice button group. Next, we have cards. And cards are great for displaying content, mixtures of, images with, some dialogue or maybe just only dialogue, right? Again, they really cover all your bases in that regard. So let's just go and copy one of these. And let's throw it on in our text editor and save and refresh to the browser. As you can see, we have a nice card ready to go. Next, we have a carousel. A carousel, we've often seen, slides from side to side, displaying different imagery and that kind of stuff. So if you want one of these, we just got to copy the following code, add our different images, and we are ready to go. Next, we got collapsibles. And these are, pretty self-explanatory. They have hidden content, right? When you click on the link, then it displays the content. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy that. And let's try it out in our browser. Okay, so we refresh. You can see that we click the button, displays the content, we click it again, and it disappears. Next, let's look at drop downs. A lot of us have seen these before, very common online. You click on one button and you have several different links you can choose from. So let's go ahead and copy that. Paste it in our browser. Refresh. Click on our button, and just like that, we have a nice drop-down menu ready to go. Moving forward, next we have forms. And, forms range from, the simple just maybe login form to maybe a more complex, informational form. You can upload files, small, medium, large. inputs, inline forms, right? They just cover, pretty much your whole 9 yards. So let's go ahead and just come up to this simple sign-in form and copy that and paste it in our text editor here. And then from there, we'll save all and go back to our browser. You can see that we have a nice simple login form ready to go. And we didn't have to configure any of the styling. It's just ready for us here. Okay. So next we have input groups. And these are oftentimes seen inside forms, right? They just add a little more context into your inputs, gives them some dialogue. And so let's go ahead and take those, paste them on in, and refresh our browser. As you can see, we have the nice input groups ready to go. Next, we have a Jumbotron. Jumbotrons, if you want to, have a message to your user, maybe you're trying to attract attention to a specific product or whatever else it may be, right? So these are very useful for those situations. So let's save all, and we refresh our browser here. As you can see, we got, a nice large message here, a little kind of, explainer paragraph here, call to action here, so very good start for, beginners. Next, we have list groups, and this is great if you're, iterating through content, maybe unknown number of list items, right? You can, display them with simple borders. Maybe if you want, you can highlight them, make them selectable. Really, it's up to you how you do it. So let's go ahead and let's copy these, and let's paste them on in our text editor here. Save all and refresh. Okay, so as you can see, ready to go. We got our list groups. Next, we have a modal. The modal is when we have an animation that darkens the background and focuses on one piece of UI in particular. So a live demo of this, if we hit here, we can see, right, all the attention is taken off the background content and focused here to the small UI section. Okay. Next, let's look at navbar. Okay, so navbar is very much how it sounds, right? It's like what we see up here. It has different options for navigation, maybe a search menu, right? Things like that. So let's go ahead and copy the navbar, and let's bootstrap it right on in to our project interface. So we save all. And we refresh, and as you can see, we have a nice navbar ready to rock and roll. Moving forward, we have pagination. And this is very useful if you're dealing with, a database has a large number of results, right? You're not going to show all 1,000 results at once, maybe 10 at a time, 20 at a time, whatever it may be. So this helps, to paginate through those results. So we refresh our browser. As you can see, these are ready to go. Moving on, we have popovers. Okay, and popovers, little messages above our buttons, right? Maybe give us a little more in-depth details on what the operation is going to do. Next, we have progress bars, and these are pretty self-explanatory, right? They just show different, percentages of loading or processing, whatever it may be at the time. And again, they really cover your different bases with different kinds of styles of bars and even animations if you want. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take the simple load bar here and save all. And we go back to our browser to refresh. And as we can see, the load bar is working right as we expected it. Next, we have Scroll Spy. And Scroll Spy is really cool when you're navigating down the page, right? And it keeps track of where you are based in the navbar, right? So I scroll and you notice the content, is changing based on where I'm scrolling, right? It's spying on your progression through the page. Finally, we have tooltips. And tooltips are similar to popovers, just a lot less complex in the way that they're more so meant for user experience, what how to use that button, what it does, but not so much display entire paragraphs or messages. Okay, so now we've seen how we can use the grid layout to split our page into sections and the component to decorate our page. You can easily use Bootstrap to scaffold together your own app with little to no trouble at all. So let's go ahead and let's open up the floor and let's see if anyone has any last questions before we exit today. So the floor is open. If you have any last questions, feel free to ask those now. Okay, not hear anyone. Going once, going twice. All right, we're out of here. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Have a great rest of your day and happy coding out there.